Princess Diana was someone that was known and loved around the world.
A unique glimpse inside royal life. Princess Diana's private chef is opening up, revealing what Diana was really like behind closed doors and in the kitchen.
For more than 20 years, he kept quiet. This man, Darren McGrady, once served as Princess Diana's personal chef, loyal and discreet. He watched from a distance while history was retold and old wounds were quietly covered up.
I'm Darren McGrady, the royal chef, former chef to the Queen, Princess Diana, Prince William, and Prince...
He cooked for royalty, but it was Diana who held his respect and his silence. Now, at 63, he's finally decided to speak. And what he said has shocked royal followers and upset many who still admire the late princess. Darren's words aren't just memories, they're powerful truths. And at the center of it all is Queen Camilla. What he reveals about her has left people stunned and asking, what really went on behind those palace walls? It all started with a single comment Darren made about the coronation. His remark came just as King Charles III and Queen Camilla prepared for their big day, and it caught everyone off guard. Most never expected Darren, known for staying out of royal drama and deeply loyal to Diana, to say anything. But he did. In an interview that surprised both royal fans and Diana supporters, Darren said he planned to celebrate the event. "Time has passed," he said, "and I believe you can respect the present while still honoring the past." It sounded thoughtful and calm, but the reaction online was immediate. Some people applauded him for showing grace, but many others felt betrayed. One angry comment read, "Diana's spirit won't rest if you cheer for the woman who hurt her." Another person wrote, "You've turned your back on her memory. You should be calling out Camilla, not toasting her." For someone once seen as a quiet protector of Diana's legacy, this change in tone surprised a lot of people. Darren's silence about Camilla had always stood out. Over the years, he gave many interviews, but never said a word about the woman once called the most hated in Britain. And people understood why. Camilla's relationship with Charles had been a big part of what made Diana's life so difficult. Many still remember the pain, even though a 2005 YouGov poll showed only 7% of Britons supported Camilla becoming queen. But by 2023, there she was, Queen Consort, crowned in front of millions. "I supported the coronation," Darren said again. "That doesn't mean I've forgotten what Diana lived through. It just means I've grown up. My view has changed," he reportedly told a journalist after his interview went viral. But for a lot of Diana supporters, it wasn't enough. They felt let down. What they didn't expect, though, was what came next. Just recently, Darren made headlines again, this time not for what he said about the coronation, but for what he revealed about Queen Camilla. Secrets he had held back for years were finally brought to light. Why now? Why speak after staying quiet all these years? Many think it was the reaction to Darren's coronation comments that pushed him to a breaking point. Being called a traitor to Diana's memory may have stirred something deeper in him. Maybe guilt, maybe grief, or maybe a promise he made to himself long ago. Whatever the reason, Darren McGrady is finally opening up. And what he shares about Camilla's behavior toward Diana isn't softened by time. It's honest, painful, and hard to hear. But before any of that, before the media storms or public fallout, Darren's story with Diana started in a kitchen, back in the early palace days, long before anything fell apart. When Darren McGrady joined the royal kitchens at Buckingham Palace in 1982, he was just the newest face in a team of 20 chefs. He never imagined that one day his life would become so closely tied to Princess Diana. That same year, the country celebrated the birth of Prince William, and it quietly marked the start of a bond between this chef and the young princess. A bond that would carry through happy times, heartbreak, and eventually, great loss. Back then, Darren's job was small. "I was chef number 20 out of 20, he once said. He started with simple kitchen work, prepping frozen vegetables for the palace staff. Under head chef Gabriel Tshumi, Darren learned not just how to cook for royalty, but how to move within the strict, silent traditions of palace life. Still, even with all the rules and routines, Diana stood out from the start. At Balmoral Castle, where the royal family spent their summers, Darren first met her in a way he didn't expect. She'd often pop into the kitchen herself, something most royals never did, to ask for a snack. Yogurt, orange juice, sometimes fruit, Darren remembered. She always said thank you. Sometimes she even helped stack dishes. Diana, sometimes in her robe and barefoot, didn't act like she was above anyone. That down-to-earth kindness stuck with him. In those early days, Diana brought a fresh warmth to the palace. She laughed easily, joked with staff, and brought a sense of lightness to a very formal world. Darren always addressed her properly, but over time, their connection grew through small daily moments and her quiet gratitude. She had little habits, like a nightly juice, carrot, celery, apple, depending on her mood. But then, things began to change. As her marriage to Prince Charles became more strained, especially with Camilla Parker Bowles still in the picture, Diana started losing her appetite. One night, she didn't ask for her usual drink. Still worried, Darren made it anyway. She drank it all in one go, he said. She looked like she'd been crying. Moments like that showed him just how deeply the affair was hurting her, long before the world knew what was really happening. In 1992, Diana and Charles officially separated. She left Buckingham Palace and moved into apartment 8 at Kensington Palace with William and Harry. For Darren, it felt like the end of something. But then, not long after, he got a call that caught him off guard. Diana asked him to become her personal chef. Darren didn't think twice. He said yes right away. Life at Kensington Palace was more relaxed, more personal. The grand, formal air of Buckingham was replaced with something softer, more human. But the pain hadn't gone away. The presence of Camilla Parker Bowles still lingered like a shadow. Darren even heard from palace staff that Camilla had been pleased about the separation. One especially cruel rumor claimed she told a friend, "He's officially mine." He always has been. Whether Diana ever heard those words or not, Darren could see how much she was carrying. Even so, Diana stayed gracious. She never lashed out. She was in pain, Darren said, but she still showed kindness. No matter how hard things got, she treated others with respect and warmth. That's what made her stand out. That's what made her Diana. As time passed at Kensington, Darren and Diana grew closer, and he saw more of her quiet suffering. And at the heart of it all was still Camilla. "I always knew I would never be queen." Diana's quiet sadness and the ever-present shadow of Camilla Parker Bowles never fully left her. Even with her efforts to build a peaceful home at Kensington Palace, the wounds from her broken marriage stayed fresh. Behind the tasteful furniture and smiling public appearances, real pain still surfaced, pain that only a few, like Darren, ever saw. One evening after dinner, Darren was clearing plates when Diana stayed behind in the kitchen. She didn't come for a snack, she needed someone to hear her. Speaking softly, almost like she was talking to herself, she said, "I've always known I will never be queen. That girl who took my husband will be queen someday." Her words hit Darren hard. He didn't know what to say, and for a moment, he just stood there. But Diana didn't need him to say anything. "Don't worry," she added gently, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You only had to listen." In that one moment, years of heartbreak and betrayal bubbled to the surface. Diana had always known, deep down, that she wouldn't be queen, not just because of her marriage, but because of how things had always been set up around her. The damage done by Charles's ongoing relationship with Camilla had reached far beyond headlines and rumors. Inside the palace, loud arguments between Charles and Diana had become routine in their final years together. Darren remembered hearing their voices echo through the walls, especially when Camilla's name came up. He couldn't help but wonder, why was this woman causing so much pain? Over time, he understood. Prince Charles had never truly let go of Camilla, not even after marrying Diana. One of Diana's most painful public moments came in 1992 when the infamous Camilla Gate tapes were released. The private phone calls between Charles and Camilla, full of intimate details, sparked a national uproar. The tapes confirmed what Diana had suspected all along. She never mentioned them to Darren, but something in her changed. She became quieter, pulled back more, and lost her interest in food. Her struggle with an eating disorder, which she would later bravely speak about in public, seemed to deepen during those hard times. Darren never said anything. He never asked, but he saw it all. Diana's 1995 BBC Panorama interview with Martin Bashir became a turning point. In front of millions, she spoke openly and painfully. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. The world was stunned. When asked directly if Mrs. Parker Bowles was part of the reason her marriage ended, Diana didn't hesitate. "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage," she said, "so it was a bit crowded." For Darren, this wasn't shocking. It was confirmation. He had seen the quiet heartbreak for years. Now, the rest of the world saw it too.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Her honesty that night didn't just expose the truth. It put a spotlight on the relationship between Charles and Camilla in a way no PR team could undo. "You try to hurt yourself on the outside because you want help," Diana admitted in the same interview. "But it's the wrong kind of help you're asking for." People had once accused her of being dramatic or attention-seeking, but this moment changed that. It gave the public a real understanding of her pain, and many stood by her more than ever. Even with all the hurt, Diana showed something else too: strength. About a year after she had moved into Kensington Palace, Darren started noticing changes. It was like she was becoming herself again. She seemed more at ease. Diana was beginning to heal, bit by bit. She worked out regularly, took better care of herself, and put even more focus into her charity work. And in a powerful moment, she spoke out about her struggle with bulimia, helping thousands of people feel less alone. Eating disorders, whether it's anorexia or bulimia, show how someone turns away from real nourishment, she explained during an interview. For Darren, this was the first time he saw Diana truly take back control, not as a princess, but as a woman who had been through deep suffering and was finally choosing to move forward. "She looked the healthiest I'd ever seen her," Darren remembered. "She was stronger. She had this glow." Things were starting to look hopeful, but that hope wouldn't last. Just as Diana was stepping back into the light, life took the cruelest turn. Darren had her meal ready. The day Diana died started like any other. It was a calm Sunday morning at Kensington Palace. The kitchen was quiet. The day ahead looked peaceful. Darren had prepared a light meal for her return from Paris. She was supposed to be back that evening, ready to spend time with William and Harry before they went back to school. It was meant to be a simple, comforting day. Just some homemade food and family time, something normal in the middle of a very public life.
Thursday marks 20 years since Princess Diana was killed in a car crash inside a Paris tunnel.
Then the television changed everything. A headline appeared: Princess Diana in car crash. Thursday marks 20 years since Princess Diana was killed in a car crash inside a Paris tunnel. Moments later came the words no one could believe: Princess Diana, dead at 36. "I thought it was a joke," Darren later said, "but it was on every channel. Then I knew it was real." The shock hit him hard. Frozen, then panicked, he rushed back into the kitchen, holding on to the tiniest hope that the news was wrong, that somehow she would walk in, safe and smiling. But then the palace faxed over Diana's will. That's when it sank in. She wasn't coming back. There would be no dinner, no warm welcome, no comforting her boys. She was gone. Within hours, Kensington Palace fell into deep, heartbreaking silence. The halls felt heavy. The grief was everywhere. The staff who had loved and protected Diana were devastated. Darren McGrady stood among them, heartbroken. "I had her meal ready," he said softly. "It just sat there, untouched." Her sudden death on August 31st, 1997, in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris while being chased by paparazzi sent shockwaves across the world. In the days that followed, the sorrow only grew. Over 2.5 billion people watched her funeral. More than 60 million flowers were left outside Kensington Palace by those grieving. Elton John re-recorded "Candle in the Wind" in her honor, and it quickly became the unofficial song of mourning around the globe. But behind all the heartbreak, another tension quietly surfaced about who should and shouldn't attend her funeral. Rumors spread that Camilla Parker Bowles had wanted to be there. Some said she hoped to pay her respects, maybe even begin to soften public resentment toward her. A few insiders suggested she believed her presence might come across as a step toward healing, a gesture to show that she cared. But Queen Elizabeth reportedly stepped in and firmly said no. Camilla was not to attend. To Darren McGrady, that decision was absolutely right. "It's a good thing she listened to the Queen and stayed away," he said. "The world wouldn't have forgiven her." People weren't just mourning a princess, they were mourning Diana. If Camilla had shown up, Darren believed it would have felt like someone returning to the scene of heartbreak they'd helped create. For those who had stood by Diana through her laughter, her tears, and her pain, the idea of Camilla walking behind that coffin was too much. The betrayal still felt fresh. The wounds hadn't healed. Diana's memory was still sacred. On the day of the funeral, Darren stood quietly with other staff members as the procession moved past. He had already visited Diana one final time at the Chapel Royal, where her body rested in silence. The hush in the room, the weight of knowing it was the last goodbye, it was overwhelming. But standing among those who had worked with her, admired her, and truly cared for her, Darren felt something else, a small, steady sense of peace. Even in death, Diana had brought people together, not just in grief, but in deep respect for her kindness, her openness, and her strength. As the world mourned publicly, a quieter change was happening behind palace walls, one that Darren would never forget. The wedding Darren refused to attend. On April 9, 2005, Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles were finally married in a quiet civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall. A religious blessing followed at St. George's Chapel. For many, it marked the end of a long and complicated chapter, a relationship that had survived years of scandal and public scrutiny. But for Darren McGrady, that day meant something entirely different. "I didn't watch. I didn't go. I couldn't," he later admitted. "My thoughts were with Diana the whole day." By then, Darren had left royal service and was living in the U.S., running a thriving catering business. Still, the royal world hadn't really left him. He stayed in touch with former palace colleagues, many of whom had also worked closely with Diana. As the wedding approached, his phone buzzed with messages. Some were simple check-ins, others quietly shared the same uneasy feeling. There was an unspoken understanding among them. Something about the celebration didn't feel right. To Darren, the ceremony didn't just mark a new chapter, it felt like history was being rewritten.
I'm Darren McGrady, the royal chef, former chef to the Queen, Princess Diana, Prince William, and Prince Harry.
He believed what was happening wasn't just about a marriage. It was a quiet erasure of everything Diana had gone through. "They got what they wanted in the end," he said, "but the cost was huge. That day just reminded me of it." What stuck with Darren most wasn't just that Camilla and Charles were now officially together. It was how quickly Diana's memory had started to fade from inside the palace. Former staff told him that once Camilla moved into Clarence House and later into Buckingham Palace, things began to shift. Some of Diana's favorite charities were pushed aside. Staff who had stayed loyal to her were reassigned or let go altogether. It felt like a reset, Darren said, like they were cleaning up the past, hiding it away. And in the middle of all that, one memory kept rising to the surface, something Diana had once quietly told him. "I'll never be queen. That girl who took my husband will be queen someday." On the day of the wedding, those words played over in his mind. And those quiet observations, kept to himself for years, would soon become the root of Darren's most powerful and painful claims about Camilla. She is pure evil. Camilla's quiet removal of Diana's memory from palace life. For years after Diana's death, Darren stayed silent, out of respect, out of grief, and maybe out of fear that speaking out would only open old wounds. But behind that silence, Darren had been watching, feeling, remembering, and when he finally began to speak, it was Camilla's actions after Diana's death that truly shocked people. In one of the most emotional moments of his public revelations, Darren, now 63, shared what he saw happen after Camilla moved into Clarence House and then Buckingham Palace. At first it was subtle, easy to overlook, but to those who had loved Diana, it was obvious. She was being erased. The small, gentle touches Diana had once brought into her private spaces, soft pastels, family photos, fresh English roses, began to disappear. Her favorite flowers, like forget-me-nots and lilies, were swapped out for Camilla's choices. Furniture was moved, some of it removed completely. It felt like she wasn't just redecorating, Darren said. It was like she was rewriting the story, Diana's story. But what hurt most was what happened to the photos. They used to be in the halls, Darren remembered. Photos of her with the boys, happy moments. They were a part of the palace. He said those photos slowly vanished. And though Camilla never said anything directly, Darren recalled how she would frown when passing them. That small look said enough. The message was unmistakable. Within months of Camilla moving in, the photos of Diana were moved. At first, they were just shifted to less visible places, then to private rooms. Eventually, they disappeared completely. Only one was left, Darren said, tucked away in a room no visitors ever saw. And then, about 3 years later, that one vanished too. For Darren, that final disappearance hit hard. "I was shocked," he said. "I remember thinking, how can someone feel so threatened by a memory? It wasn't even a person anymore. It was just a photo, and even that was too much for her." That's when Darren spoke the words that exploded across headlines. "She is pure evil." He didn't say it for effect. He didn't say it to provoke. "That was the first thought that came to my mind," he explained. "Once I saw everything that had been done to remove Diana from the home she helped shape, it made my stomach turn. It was cruel. It felt intentional." Inside the palace, some called the changes normal, just updates, part of a fresh start. But for Darren, and many who had truly known Diana, it felt like more than redecorating. "It was a message," he said, "a way of replacing everything Diana stood for." What made it even harder, Darren said, was the energy shift. Diana had brought life into those halls. She made the palace feel warm, he recalled. She'd come into the kitchen barefoot, asking for orange juice, or she'd quietly tuck blankets into her car to hand out to people on the street. That kind of kindness, that presence, you couldn't miss it. But when Camilla came in, Darren said, that light just went out. Still, for years, Darren kept quiet. He stayed in the U.S., building his catering business, and quietly honored Diana through events and appearances. But over time, watching Camilla rise from private partner to Duchess of Cornwall and finally Queen Consort, he felt more and more drawn to speak. "I supported the coronation," he said, "because I believe in moving forward. I believe in honoring the monarchy, not just one moment, but the whole journey." Then he added, "But moving forward doesn't mean we bury the truth. It doesn't mean we forget the cost." Darren made it clear he wasn't speaking out of bitterness. It came from something deeper. "It's about love," he said. "Love for Diana and love for the truth." "I owe her that," he repeated. "After everything she lived through, the least I can do is protect her story. All of it, even the hard parts." His words hit home, not just in royal circles, but with people around the world. To many, Darren's voice confirmed what they'd quietly suspected, that Diana's legacy had slowly been pushed aside in favor of something neater and more controlled. And for others, it was a heartbreaking reminder of how history often forgets the ones who suffered in silence. The message couldn't have been clearer. If this story moved you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others who remember Diana not just as a princess, but as a kind, resilient woman whose light still shines.